Hello and welcome. I'm Jordan, and I have to do a little YouTube channel for a class. So for my videos, I'm going to be making baking videos. So of this series, this first video is going to be a pumpkin roll. If you guys don't know what a pumpkin roll is, it is like a sheet of pumpkin cake with cream cheese frosting on it, and then rolled up to make like a nice little roll. Don't have any finished to show you, but we will have a nice one at the end of this. Usually I do this in a two-step process. I'll bake the cake and then I'll make the filling, usually in separate days, just because once you make the cake, you have to wait for it to cool, and then you can frost it. So for the first part of the recipe, you're gonna need, well, for the cake, you're gonna need 3/4 cup of flour, 1/2 teaspoon baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of cloves, and 1/4 teaspoon salt. Oh yeah, and you have to preheat your oven to 375. I have mine preheating already, if you can hear it. And then for the rest of it, you need 3 eggs, 1 cup granulated sugar, and 2/3 of a cup of pumpkin. And so this is the Libby's pumpkin roll recipe. Here's the Libby's pure pumpkin. There's no specific pumpkin that you have to use. This is just the smallest can at the store, and they happen to have a really good recipe too. So I've been following that for all of the pumpkin rolls that I make. But for these ingredients, the first half I'm going to put in this bowl, and then the second half I'm going to be putting in this bowl over here on my mixer. So I'm going to pan this over with my lovely KitchenAid mixer. You don't need this mixer, obviously, but you can hand mix. It's easier with like a hand mixer or a standing mixer. This is just my favorite. Obviously, just prep, get yourself a nice clean area and some clean hands. I'm gonna wash mine right now. Roll up my sleeves. So I usually like to do my second bowl while I do my first. So I'll get this started because you gotta whip up the eggs so they have stiff peaks. So you need 3 eggs and then 1 cup of sugar. You whip that up, and then once it's whipped, you can add the 2/3 of a cup of pumpkin into there. I am gonna get a separate dish for my eggs, just so I don't get any shells in there, because I'm not a professional. But sometimes I like to think that I am. Crack your eggs all up in the bowl. Beautiful, beautiful. Did drop a little shell in there. I gotta get that out. Oh no. You don't need to set your oven super early into the process. If you're completely new to making pumpkin rolls, it may take a little minute. All right, so eggs into the bowl. Oopsie. Hold on, how would I make it easier to see? Eggs are in the bowl. 3 eggs. And then I need a cup of sugar. Granulated sugar, by the way, not the powdered sugar. This kinds of sugar. My measuring cup is marked on the inside, so I gotta keep an eye. Eesh, my hands are wet. Oopsie. We measure with the heart. All right. Make sure all of these are off before you plug it in. Done that before and gotten stuff everywhere. If you have a KitchenAid, lock it in, make sure, and just let it go. Get y'all back over here. I'm still working on the best angle of doing this, so hopefully throughout the series I'll get better, perhaps get a tripod. I hope the mixer isn't too loud. Hope you can still hear me. Let me scoot it a little closer. Alright, so for the first bowl, you're going to use 3/4 cups of flour. And just because I like to be able to flatten my flour, I'm just going to use this little cup instead of this. I do need a knife. I usually tend to use unbleached flour. If you have a preference, it doesn't really matter what you use. Any kind of flour. Level that off, but don't pack it down. So there's one. I like to say it out loud as I go so I can't mess it up. We got 2. And then 3. Recipe says you're supposed to sift. I don't find that sifting makes a difference, so I usually skip that step. That's okay. If you want to do it, you go right ahead. There we go. Alright, and then a teaspoon of baking powder. I have most of my things that I need just set out right here, right out of view. You can't see the mess. There's the mess. Just so I stay on track. I like to see everything right in front of me. And we got these nice convenient magnetic spoons so I can't lose anything either. Alright, so baking soda and baking powder. We're going to do the soda first. I'm not good at this, hold on. Powder, and then you need cinnamon, and then also cloves. Just ground cinnamon and ground cloves. I usually go a little heavier with the cinnamon because I'm a big fan. But obviously do as you please. Yeah, I would describe this cake as maybe like a pumpkin spice cake. It just kind of reminds me of pumpkin spice. I think it's really good. Very good fall snack. Alright, so then got cloves, cinnamon, and then we need 1/4 tablespoon of salt. Where's my spoon? Beautiful. Alright, and then you just kind of mix the dry stuff together. I'm going to get myself a spoon. Should look like this. And it's kind of off-white. And then the eggs are looking like this. I think I'm gonna speed them up a little bit, just so they get a little fluffier. Probably should have did that to begin with. Didn't want it to be that loud though. But I think we're just gonna have to deal with it. And for the pumpkin, since it comes in this big can, I usually freeze it after I make a pumpkin roll just because I don't use the whole can. Use like maybe like a third at a time, if that. So I usually freeze it. It's kind of chunky right now, but it should be cool or warmed up since it was in the fridge. I just need my measuring cup. So you're gonna need 2/3 of a cup of pumpkin. So I'm gonna do 2 1/3. Hoping I have enough. I might not have enough. Let me browse real quick. Alright. I just ran to the store and got some more pumpkin. Don't be like me, make sure you have all your ingredients before you start. Or enough of all your ingredients before you start. So, back to where we left off. 2/3 of a cup of pumpkin. I would suggest you to not do that with your can lids. Do not cut your finger. Alright. I'm going to scrape the remaining bit of pumpkin out of my last can. I had perfectly enough for 1/3, but not 2/3. So I'm going to add this cup into my egg mixture. I will scrape the sides, do not worry. It's all on that side. Let's get that back up there. Okay. I measure with the heart again. So I think recipes are kind of a suggestion with a general idea of the item, but sometimes I add a little extra just cause. Alright, so now the pumpkin is done. And once that mixture is all complete in there, we're gonna give it a little bit more time to mix up and fluff up. And then we're gonna add the dry ingredients to that bowl. But while we're waiting on that, important thing that I probably should have mentioned in the beginning is I will be baking it in a cookie tray like this, or I think they're called a jelly roll tray. Any tray with a lip like this, pretty much. This is my thickest one that I like to use the most, so I usually always use this one for the pumpkin rolls. Just because it has a higher end than the rest of my trays. But usually what I do to prep this is I will spray the whole thing with like a non-stick spray, and then I line it with parchment paper. So I'm gonna go spray it outside because it's a mess and I don't like the oil particles in the air. It bothers me in here. So I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna do that outside. Alright, once you spray your tray, it should look about like that. I go a little heavy with the oil, just in case. I don't like my things sticking. So I go a little heavier with it. I will wipe some off with a paper towel or spread it out. But now onto the parchment paper. I think I'm gonna set this down right here so you guys get a better view. Hopefully this is better, even though my head is cut off. You guys don't need to see me anyway. Usually just line it up to the size of the pan and try to tear it as evenly as I can. I usually try to put the curve down just so it doesn't roll up, but the oil on the tray should help make the paper stick down. Usually I use that to my advantage. Why I do it that way. And then if it's not perfect, you can trim up the edges. I do that just so I can't get the paper caught on things. So I've had that happen where I'm taking it to the oven and the oven, like I catch the sheet on the oven and then it moves the cake, and that's not good. Oops, I know they just cut that a little short, but that's okay. I will crease it in the corners just so it sits better, nice and beautiful. I'm debating if I want to spray this top layer. I forget if I usually do it or not. I don't think it would hurt to add a little bit more though. I'll just use my previously oiled paper towel. But since it's parchment paper, the cake shouldn't really stick to it anyway. Alright, I would say my mixture's looking good. Let me get my spatula. Scrape the sides. And there are just a little bit of pumpkin bits I just scraped off the side in the bowl right now, but that will combine when I put the dry ingredients up in there. So I'm gonna do that now. They say to fold it in, but I usually just kind of slowly add it as I'm mixing. That's why I like using the standing mixer better than a hand mixer, so you can do two things at once. Give it a little second, and then I'll add some more. But this cake is a little bit more liquidy, so if, like, once you're done adding the dry ingredients to it and it still looks a little like wet, liquidy, it's okay. It will bake into a cake, trust. The first time I made it, I was very concerned. I was like, did I not add enough flour? Am I missing something? But no, it just looks like that. So I'll show you once I'm done mixing all this stuff in, what it should look like. It should be smelling very good by now. I love it. Don't do what I do. Don't put your utensils near that mixer. Don't get your stuff caught in there. I should be more cautious than I am, but I like to think of myself as a professional. Scrape the sides. Oop, I dropped it. Alright, then we're gonna mix it again, just to make sure everything's up and mixed. So, usually what I would do while this is happening, I would start thawing or cooling, what's the right word for that? Warming up the cream cheese and the butter for the filling, but since I'm going to be doing that tomorrow, I'm not going to be pulling anything out right now. But if you're prepping for that and going to do that all in one day, you want to have your butter softened and your cream cheese. So just to about room temp. If you go to work, you can set it out in the morning. It'll be ready when you get back, or whatnot. Do as you please. But you're going to need 6 tablespoons of butter for that. So not a full stick. A full stick is about 8. So like a stick minus 2. Like that. Alright, once you're done mixing everything all together, usually I like to double check just at the bottom of the bowl to make sure everything gets mixed up, because sometimes if you don't adjust these KitchenAid mixers, there'll be like a little space right by the bottom where it misses, and there could still be some flour and stuff not mixed up. I think mine's looking pretty good. For the water-looking cake, this is kind of what I mean. I mean, it's for, I'll just show you how I pour it. Like, that's pretty liquidy, but yeah. Once it's all mixed up, we're gonna pour it in the tray. A little special way to do this. Maybe make sure it's all the way on the counter. Make sure you get all that good stuff. Scrape all of that out. And once you have it in the tray, I usually like to just kind of spread it out just a little bit. You can do that or use your spatula. It's a little faster this way. But sometimes I like to try to let it settle on its own. It should fill up the pan pretty well. If it doesn't reach all the corners, that's okay. You don't need to force it. You don't need to make it super thin. But it will rise to like about ½ an inch to like 1 inch thick. So it may not look like much now, but as it bakes, it will get larger. All right, so there's it in the tray. I'm gonna pop it in the oven. Cooking time is from 10 to 12 minutes. You just kind of stick your knife in. Usually I'll put it in at 10 or 11 minutes and I'll check it with a knife. Okay, unfortunately my video cut. I'm running out of storage on my phone, but it's time to put this in the oven anyway. So for about 10 to 12 minutes I usually do it for. I'll put it in for 11 and then I'll check it out when the timer goes off. Alright. I'll see you when it's done. Alright, hello everybody. It is later, as you can see. We have our cake. It is baked. I let it cool for a little too long, but that's okay. The last step for the cake will be to put it on, what would this be called? Like a hand towel, or like something like about this big. And this is what we're gonna use to help get our cake to be like in the spiral shape. So it doesn't stick, we're gonna cover it in powdered sugar. This may get a little messy. I'm gonna try not to fling this all on the floor. I think you're supposed to like sprinkle it. I always go very heavy because why not? Why not? I'm gonna put a little bit more just to get like the edges of where the cake is gonna sit, because the cake is a little stickier than you would think. All right. And then after that, you gotta flip this cake onto there. So, like that. Usually I do this when it's hot still, but I didn't have time to earlier. So hopefully this peels off nicely. Beautiful. And you fold over one end. That's what I usually do. I'm gonna put a little more powdered sugar, just so none of it sticks. Oops, I definitely just got some on the floor. It's whatever. And then you want to rolling it up. And be kind of gentle. You don't want to tear the cake, but you also don't want it to be loosey-goosey. So roll it up just like that. And then I put it in my fridge until I'm ready to make the filling. The filling will be in part 2. Alright, good morning everybody and welcome to part 2 of the pumpkin roll. So for this part we're doing the filling, which is a block of cream cheese, 1 cup of powdered sugar, 6 tablespoons of softened butter, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Hopefully your pumpkin roll is nice and chilled. Mine has been in the fridge for 2 days. So first you want to make sure it can unroll. I'm just going to take a little peek-see so it doesn't tear or anything. You want to be kind of gentle so that you don't rip the cake. Mine looks pretty good so far, so I'm just going to roll it back up and let it warm up. And let's get started on the filling. So you need 1 block of cream cheese. It can be any cream cheese, does not matter. This is always just on sale at Tops. So I get this. Make sure it's room temperature though. You gotta make sure that you leave out the cream cheese and the butter, just so when you mix the filling, you don't have chunks. And usually what I start with on the mixer to make sure there's no chunks is this mixer head, because it's got this little thing that flattens everything out. Real nice, and I find that it just using that I have a better outcome of the frosting. I'll use this one and then I'll switch it to this one so it gets a little fluffier. Gives you more dishes, but I think it is worth it in the end, just to avoid little chunks of butter. Alright, so just add the whole block into there. There's no specific order that you have to do this in. I'm sure if you look at the recipe, the real recipe, that it'll tell you to do it in a certain order. It does not matter. It does not matter. Just trying to get this all off the pack. There we go. I'll probably eat the rest of that. Alright, so you got that in there. Usually, I will add my butter and my, oopsie. You did not see that, it did not fall. Usually I add my butter and my cream cheese, and then I'll add the milk or heavy cream. It doesn't really matter which one you use. Or no, actually I lied. I'll add the vanilla. I got plug her in. Just to get the filling creamier before I add the sugar, because then it'll get thicker when I don't want it to get thicker. But I'm gonna get the butter going and the cream cheese first. Usually mix that on high, just so it blends up. I'll let this go for a little bit and then I'll scrape the sides to make sure that it gets all incorporated well. But since my butter and cream cheese are nicely softened, I don't think I'll have to do this for too long. Usually I have a bad habit of forgetting to take out my butter. It's always the butter that I forget. I'll take out the cream cheese and then I'll forget that I need to add butter, and then that'll be my ingredient that messes everything up just because it won't be softened right. But you do kind of want to avoid like heating up the butter in the microwave, so it's better just to like be patient and let it get to room temperature on its own, just because then it's uneven. But I think this is looking pretty good. I'll give y'all a little look-see. Should look about like that. Nice and mixed thoroughly. So next we're gonna add the vanilla, which you need 1 teaspoon of this. Where's my teaspoon? Okay. 1 teaspoon. Sometimes I will add just a little bit more, because I love vanilla, so do whatever your heart pleases with the amount of vanilla that you add. Just don't add too much because then it might taste bad. Another thing that you're also going to need is a little bread pan like this. Anything about this size, just to put the pumpkin roll in after. And the pumpkin roll is going to be just like a little bit longer than this container if you do have a bread pan like this. Use a Pyrex one. This is my favorite. But usually the pumpkin roll is just slightly too long, so you're gonna have to trim off the ends. Usually those are my little taste testing bits, because once you cut off that little bit, you'll see the beautiful spiral inside. But we have got this all mixed together. This is coming together very easily today. I'm gonna scrape this stuff off, and then you need a cup of powdered sugar. I'm very pleased with the outcome of this. I never take the butter out in time, so it's always chunky when I mix it up, and then I have to like individually flatten the little chunks of butter that are still in the icing. Yeah, powdered sugar, doesn't matter what kind. This is another one that's just cheap at the store. I'm using a half cup, so I'm going to use this twice, just because my brother broke the 1 cup. So we're going to realize what we got. That looks pretty good to me. I got one more. Yeah, we'll let that be a little mountainous scoop. Beautiful. All right. I wish I had a better angle for this to be filmed at. I'm right here. Let me clean this up a little bit. I just got all of that powdered sugar on my foot. Perhaps I'll just move this back. I think that's better. Sorry, my cooking area isn't that clean right now, but this should also smell really delicious. This is one of my favorite fall treats. Even though you don't have to just make it around the fall, I tend to just because pumpkin, and yeah, why not? Here's our beautiful cake unraveled. The last time I did one of these, maybe I'm speaking too soon. The cake got caught on the towel, which I think it did a little bit for this one, if you can see right around there. But I've had it be worse, so this is really good. Alright, I think our icing is pretty good. Honestly, I don't know if I'm going to fluff it up with the other mixer attachment. It looks pretty good to me right now. I'm going to give y'all a little look. That's what it looks like, nice and delicious. Should be a nice off-white, kind of like yellowish maybe, I guess I'd say. I'm gonna eat this. So if you love yourself, leave yourself the mixer. You deserve to have a little treat. Just making sure it's all incorporated nice. This looks pretty good though. I'm very happy with this. All right, once it's all combined, you just plop it all on there. Bow. I guess you shouldn't be too aggressive because you don't want to rip up the cake. I get a little too confident with it. You just want to spread it out as evenly as you can along the cake. Doesn't need to be beautiful. You'll probably cut off the ends anyway, so if you think you're going to be short, try to focus on the middle. But if you can see cake under it, like through the frosting, then you might want to add a little bit more just because it could be a little uneven, the cake itself. But I find that I usually have more than enough of the icing just with the recipe that it calls for. And usually to get a better swirl, you should go a little lighter. Well, you can't see that. I go a little lighter on like this first like rolling bit because this is going to be the most inner part of your roll. Kind of want to go a little light with it just so it can roll nicely. I find that sometimes it'll just look flat and it doesn't have like that aesthetic kind of swirl look to it. I've gotten pretty good at making this over the years, but I have not fully mastered it. Maybe this year will be the year, maybe this will be the pumpkin roll that does it. But I guess we'll see. Just got a little bit left in here. I probably shouldn't put it all right here, but I might. All right, this looks pretty good to me. I'm about out of filling in the bowl, so I try to use every little bit of that just so I don't have a ton of leftovers. All right, this is how it should look. Nice even coat over your pumpkin cake. So I'm gonna start rolling it. And you just gotta be gentle not to rip the cake. See, there's a little bit of damage. That's just from it getting caught on the towel. And that happens sometimes if you don't add enough powdered sugar, which it's very hard to like find the perfect ratio of it. Just because you don't want to make a huge mess in your kitchen, but you also don't want to waste up all your powdered sugar. So that's why I usually like to go heavy. You can use this little knife to trim off the edges. You can go use a bigger knife, but this is just the one I have readily available. Okay. Doesn't look super beautiful on that side, but we'll see how it does on this side. And usually it's better to cut when it's colder, just because then it stays together more, or once it's like settled a little bit with the cream cheese all together. It's not that beautiful. I've done better, I will say that. But it's going to taste so good no matter what. And there's the finished pumpkin roll. Let's give her a little taste test. Delicious. Delicious as always. This is really good with some apple cider. I would say it's like the best pairing. 2 delicious fall snacks in one. What could be better? Yeah, hopefully that's not too awful and painful to follow. This was my first little tutorial of literally anything for the YouTube. So if there's any suggestions or things that I could do better, let me know. Or if there's any other recipes that you think I should try, let me know. But I hope this was worth your time.